What if one morning the sound of engines outside your window marked the beginning of America's largest manhunt in decades? No warning, no headlines, just the low hum of black SUVs sliding through fog-drenched streets. In the stillness before sunrise, the operation began. Across the nation, from Chicago's narrow alleys to Miami's gated suburbs, the quiet of dawn was shattered by synchronized raids. Radios crackled, flashlights pierced the dark. Federal agents moved in silence, their orders precise: locate, detain, dismantle. By 6 a.m., it was no longer routine enforcement. It was history in motion. Homeland Security called it the most comprehensive immigration operation in modern America. Under President Donald Trump's renewed border directive, ICE, U.S. Marshals, and the FBI acted as one strike force. In just the first 100 days, over 32,000 arrests were confirmed, 1,155 gang affiliates, 39 linked to terror cells, and thousands flagged for violent crimes or trafficking. The scope was staggering, the timing deliberate. According to internal memos cited by Reuters, Operation Continental Shield was the culmination of a year-long intelligence buildup. This wasn't about numbers, it was about message, one senior official told the BBC. Borders, sovereignty, and deterrence. Those were the three words shaping every move. Analysts from Defense News and Jane's Defense Weekly noted that the coordination mirrored the precision of counter-terrorism sweeps in Afghanistan or Iraq. The same digital surveillance grid used abroad had been repurposed domestically to identify high-risk suspects through predictive tracking and AI-enhanced data. The logic was clear. If insurgency tactics could adapt, so could border enforcement. The operation's scale immediately rippled beyond America's shores. In Europe, parallels were drawn to Poland's border militarization amid migrant surges. And in the Middle East, Israel's counter-infiltration doctrines along Gaza were being studied as templates for deterrence. Meanwhile, Chinese state media framed the campaign as proof of Western hypocrisy, highlighting Beijing's own surveillance-based stability programs. Global comparisons underscored a new reality. National security was no longer confined to front lines abroad. It had moved into neighborhoods and highways. Yet beneath the armored precision, human stories began to emerge. Families separated, homes raided, children left behind at dawn. Every border has a human cost, wrote The Guardian. But for Washington, the calculus was national survival. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem stated, "A nation that cannot enforce its laws cannot protect its people." Her words echoed across a divided America. Some heard protection, others heard fear. As the sun rose over a nation now fully awake, one question loomed over the success and sorrow of that morning's raids. How far should a democracy go to defend itself before it begins to resemble the threats it fears most? The second wave came not with chaos, but with choreography. From the air, it looked like a synchronized drill. Convoys advancing, radios whispering in encrypted tones, agents closing in at exact GPS coordinates. In cities like Houston and Phoenix, raids unfolded street by street, door by door. Each movement followed months of surveillance. Each target was mapped through layers of digital breadcrumbs, bank records, phone pings, social media posts. Precision, not panic, defined this operation. According to Reuters, federal analysts had integrated predictive AI models similar to those used in drone targeting during overseas missions. The same algorithms that tracked insurgent supply chains in Iraq were now identifying domestic trafficking rings and cartel-linked smuggling corridors across the US-Mexico border. It's counterinsurgency without the war zone, a former DHS cybersecurity officer told Defense News. The battlefield has shifted to the streets of America. But every layer of precision revealed another hidden agenda. ICE and the FBI discovered criminal alliances far deeper than immigration violations. Ties between South American cartels, Eastern European cyber syndicates, and sleeper agents quietly laundering money through U.S. infrastructure projects. A Jane's intelligence brief noted that Russian and Iranian proxies were exploiting migrant flows to mask covert financial channels. Border security, the report said, is now a hybrid theater of warfare. In Miami, a Cuban-born ICE commander described how raids uncovered encrypted networks coordinating illegal weapons shipments between Mexico and the Caribbean. "We weren't just arresting people," he said. "We were dismantling shadow economies." Every door breached revealed another strand of a global web, and every arrest disrupted a channel that could have reached far beyond America's borders. Strategically, this domestic offensive resonated with global conflicts unfolding in Still, the moral equation was growing heavier. DW reported that inside the Department of Homeland Security, officials argued that every nation must choose between control and chaos. But civil rights advocates warned that unchecked enforcement risked creating a surveillance state. The debate, freedom versus safety, was no longer theoretical. It was visible in every checkpoint, every database, every silent dawn raid. As dusk fell and agents filed their reports, one truth stood unspoken. When technology can find anyone, who decides who deserves to be found? It began with a single name, Kesey Barrera Rosa, a 24-year-old suspect whose story would turn a routine operation into a moral battlefield. In Maryland, ICE agents had traced a missing person report to the woods near Cedarville State Forest. What they uncovered there, a shallow grave, a vanished young woman, and a trail of illegal entry records, shook even seasoned investigators. "Every unchecked border," one agent whispered, "has a story like this waiting to happen." The numbers from Washington were clean and orderly. 32,000 arrests, 1,155 gang members, 39 terror suspects, but the reality behind them was raw and human. Families shattered at dawn, mothers separated from children, a child's backpack left behind in the chaos of an early morning raid. The Guardian reported on tearful reunions and long nights at detention centers where silence carried heavier weight than words. Homeland Security officials countered that compassion without enforcement breeds tragedy of another kind. Without law, Secretary Kristi Noem told BBC America, "We invite more Kesey Barreras, more victims whose names we never learn." Analysts at Jane's Defense Weekly saw parallels with conflict zones abroad. In Ukraine, civilians pay the price when lines blur between combatant and refugee. In Gaza, innocent lives are consumed by the crossfire of state defense. And in Xinjiang, China justifies mass surveillance with the language of security and order. The same justification echoes through democracies now fighting invisible wars within their own borders. But beyond politics, the operation revealed America's fragile soul, a clash between duty and empathy. In Texas, a Border Patrol agent told DW, "We're soldiers without battlefields, fighting ghosts that wear human faces." The statement went viral, drawing praise and outrage alike. Critics warned that militarized rhetoric dehumanized migrants, while supporters argued it reflected the new reality of hybrid warfare, where crime, terror, and migration intertwine. President Donald Trump, addressing the nation from the White House, framed the issue starkly. Every nation must choose. Either you enforce your borders or you cease to be a nation at all. His approval ratings surged among conservative blocs while progressive states announced lawsuits challenging the legality of mass raids. The Reuters editorial board described it as a domestic Cold War between those who see walls as safety and those who see them as scars. Globally, governments were watching. France and Germany debated adopting similar AI-based border screening after a surge in smuggling through the Balkans. Israel discreetly shared data mining protocols used to track infiltrations near Rafah. Even Australia, and amid the applause and outrage, one question refused to fade. When justice wears armor, who protects the human heart behind the badge? The first clue was a coded message intercepted off the Florida coast, a shipment manifest that made no sense. Within 48 hours, Operation Tidal Wave was in motion. Helicopters thundered above Miami's skyline as convoys of ICE and FBI agents closed in on targets scattered from Tampa to Key West. By dawn, nearly 800 arrests had been made in a single week, a shockwave that rattled criminal networks from the Caribbean to Central America. This was not a dragnet, it was a decapitation strike. Among those captured were MS-13 enforcers, Russian fugitives wanted for manslaughter, and Colombian cartel lieutenants connected to cross-border smuggling. Reuters described the raids as a blend of military precision and legal theater, where agents operated under wartime coordination protocols previously reserved for counterterrorism. Inside command centers, digital screens mapped live arrests like an unfolding chess match. Federal briefings cited by BBC News revealed that Operation Tidal Wave had roots in Project Helios, a classified DHS initiative linking American and Interpol data into a single predictive grid. Every suspect was already known before the first door was kicked in, said one senior analyst. We were watching ghosts materialize. What made the operation historic wasn't just the arrests, it was the intelligence harvested. Confiscated devices exposed encrypted correspondence between Latin American cartels and Eastern European brokers dealing in weapons, fentanyl, and human trafficking routes. Jane's Defense Weekly reported that fragments of communication referenced Iranian front companies funneling drone components through Central America. For U.S. counterintelligence, it confirmed a chilling thesis. The cartels had become global actors, blurring the line between organized crime and geopolitical warfare. Defense experts at DW compared it to Ukraine's digital counteroffensive, where every captured signal revealed a broader enemy network. Florida became the front line of a new kind of war, wrote one analyst, where the enemy holds passports instead of flags. Meanwhile, Israeli security specialists privately applauded the data fusion method, seeing parallels with their own hybrid threat operations in the Golan Heights. President Trump addressed the nation from the Oval Office. His words were measured, yet thunderous. We are not just protecting borders, we are protecting civilization itself. The White House's message was clear. The campaign against infiltration in criminal networks had evolved into a doctrine of American deterrence, as consequential as any foreign deployment. But as The Guardian observed, the same success that strengthened the state also strained its conscience. Images of families handcuffed outside suburban homes reignited debates on proportionality and due process. Civil rights groups warned of a victory that erodes what it claims to defend. Still, support remained high across much of the country, particularly in regions hit hardest by cartel-linked violence. Behind the headlines, agents spoke of exhaustion and quiet pride. One officer in Tampa said simply, "We didn't just catch criminals. We stopped futures from being stolen." And yet, amid the triumph, the question lingered like a distant echo. When every victory against the shadows demands more surveillance, who watches the light? No one expected the hammer to fall inside the courts themselves. Yet in Wisconsin, a sitting judge was led from his chambers in handcuffs, accused of obstructing an ICE operation by hiding an undocumented fugitive. The image stunned the nation, a guardian of law now accused of shielding its defiance. For many, it was the moment America realized the storm had reached the heart of its institutions. According to Reuters, the Department of Justice confirmed multiple internal investigations into local officials accused of willful interference with federal enforcement. The line between compassion and corruption had blurred beyond recognition. Some cities refused to cooperate with ICE, citing sanctuary laws, while others quietly provided data access to avoid federal penalties. This is not just about immigration anymore, said a former FBI official to BBC News. It's about who decides what justice looks like. In Washington, the Trump administration doubled down. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Attorney General Mark Meadows announced a unified judicial review task force, stating, "No title, no office, no robe places anyone above the law." The announcement rippled through America's legal landscape, shaking institutions that once saw themselves as immune to executive scrutiny. DW commentators compared the move to Europe's own struggles over sovereignty, where national governments clash with courts over migration policy. Al Jazeera framed it as America's judicial civil war, while The Guardian warned of a system policing itself into paralysis. Yet within conservative circles, the crackdown was hailed as long overdue, a cleansing of bureaucratic decay that had allowed crime to flourish under moral pretexts. Defense analysts at Janes argued that Trump's judicial offensive reflected a strategic doctrine of total accountability, mirroring tactics used in the military's chain of command discipline. You cannot expect operational success, one report noted, if the system itself tolerates sabotage from within. The principle echoed in other theaters of power. In Ukraine, anti-corruption tribunals were purging judges accused of leaking intelligence to Russia. In Israel, judicial reform debates had ignited protests over whether national security justified limits on judicial independence. Even China, under its national security law, had eliminated local discretion entirely, merging law enforcement with ideological loyalty. The US, unlike these nations, still stood between law and loyalty, and the ground was shaking. For federal agents, every new arrest brought whispers of resistance from within the system. "We were chasing criminals," one ICE officer told Defense News. "But sometimes, it felt like we were also chasing ghosts in our own government." Public reaction was divided and volatile. Supporters of the administration viewed the prosecutions as proof of moral resolve. Critics called them authoritarian overreach. But one truth resonated across both camps. The machinery of justice was no longer untouchable. The same spotlight that hunted fugitives now illuminated the nation's own fractures. As the headlines faded, an uneasy silence settled over the courts, like the pause before a verdict. And the question rose, heavy and unspoken. Can a democracy remain just when justice itself becomes a battlefield? 100 days after the first convoys rolled into the fog, America stood transformed. Streets once quiet at dawn now carried an invisible tension, the knowledge that power could appear without warning. The official numbers told one story: 32,000 arrests, 1,155 gang members neutralized, 39 terror-linked suspects detained, and a measurable drop in illegal crossings. Yet behind those statistics lay a deeper truth. The United States had crossed its own threshold. President Donald Trump called the campaign a triumph of law, order, and destiny. In a televised address carried by Reuters and BBC World News, he declared, "We have restored the rule of law and the world is watching America lead again." Indeed, the world was watching, with admiration, anxiety, and quiet calculation. NATO officials privately told DW that the operation demonstrated civil security readiness on par with military mobilization. In contrast, The Guardian warned that the success carried the unmistakable scent of power without pause. Strategically, the 100-day offensive redefined Homeland Defense doctrine. Defense News reported that DHS had established a new command model integrating counterterrorism, immigration, and cyber surveillance under one digital canopy, Project SentinelNet. Its algorithms, trained on global intelligence feeds, gave federal agencies near real-time awareness of cross-border threats. Experts at Jane's Defense Weekly compared it to NATO's integrated air defense system, noting that the United States has now applied wartime fusion intelligence to domestic policy. Beyond US borders, the echoes were unmistakable. In Ukraine, predictive AI was being used to intercept Russian drone swarms before launch, a mirror of America's internal tracking grid. In Israel, the fight against Iranian proxy cells adopted the same data-driven model to map infiltration patterns. And in Beijing, the Chinese government boasted that its national stability network had long surpassed Western efforts, though Western analysts saw that as a warning, not an achievement. The line between defense and domination was fading everywhere. But while nations debated sovereignty and surveillance, ordinary Americans were left to live beneath it. Civil liberties groups filed lawsuits, arguing that unregulated algorithmic targeting risked turning citizens into suspects. In small towns, people whispered about drones overhead, about unmarked vans parked at night. The world's safest nation, wrote Al Jazeera, is now also the most watched. Yet polls showed record approval ratings for Trump's security reforms. For millions, fear had become comfort. Order had replaced chaos. Still, within think tanks and newsroom editorials, a quiet reckoning began. America had regained control of its borders, yes, but had it surrendered something less visible? In chasing safety, had it traded away the silence that once defined freedom? As the hum of surveillance drones merged with the wind over Washington, a question lingered like static in the air. Not shouted, but whispered in every home, courthouse, and newsroom across the nation. If justice can find anyone, anywhere, at any time, who will dare to question it when it comes for them? Operation Continental Shield marked a turning point in America's modern identity. In just 100 days, coordinated federal raids swept across the nation, detaining over 32,000 individuals and reshaping the balance between liberty and control. Under President Donald Trump, the campaign fused military-grade intelligence with domestic enforcement, creating a model of total domain security. Supported by agencies from ICE to the FBI, the strategy dismantled criminal and terror-linked networks, but at a profound moral cost. Internationally, the operation signaled a new era of hybrid governance, where national defense, technology, and surveillance merged into a single system of deterrence. Allies studied it, rivals imitated it. Critics warned it blurred democracy's limits. The question left behind was not whether it worked, but what it changed. America emerged safer but quieter, stronger but less free. And in that silence, one truth endures. The line between protection and power is thinner than ever before.